There's no call. I mean, there's no roll call. Press your button to indicate you're here. Representative Rosenthal.
People do that all the time. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Kohler, call the names of those who are absent backwards.
Representatives Vigil.
No, actually, the names in backwards.
Lihiv. Lihiv. Reliot. Moals. Snepets. Grebnenos. Tox. Refas. Alorp. Nobap. Grebdron. Representative Grebdron. Notlem. Yam. Representative Yam. Eknerol. Ooh. Ureg. Narud. Erod. Ossergled. Osogred led. Merak. No, you're Greb Nenos.
I know I'm wearing them all backwards. That one used to be my fake ID in high school.
They all sound like Star Trek characters.
That way, if the State Patrol asks me to...
Representative Melton, we're in the middle of a call. You don't have the...
Oh, well, Mr. Speaker, I just was going to ask Representative Rosenthal, was this a part of the Star Trek caucus? Is this how you call roll?
Mr. Kohler, please call all the members who are absent in Pig Latin.
Orumque. El Grosso Day. Orde. Urande. Eroje. Orensley. Ame. Ordbergne. Abonpe. Kotse. Tevense. Eilerte.
You're good.
I don't want. Oh no, I'm not gonna do that.
Gaelic?
No, no.
In a Scottish accent. Mr. Kohler, please call the names of the members not present in a Scottish accent.
Representatives Del Grosso, Dor, Giro.
That's good.
Lawrence, May, Nordberg, Pabon, Scott, Representative Scott, Stevens, Tyler.
He's very good at that.
Borodkin. Del Grosso. Dor. Giro. May. Pabone. Scott. Stevens. Tyler. And Representative Borodkin.
Yes.
I just overheard that. Yes? Okay, thanks. They're on their way. Jim says they're on their way. Oh.
My members are pressing the wrong button.
Yeah, craft art. Foot.
Just to remind people, Democrats, you're supposed to press green. Republicans, you're supposed to press red. If you press the wrong button, just to be helpful, if you press the right one.
What happens if you press the wrong button?
Where is that in the rules?
Just so I know if I have enough majority to actually.
What if
Where is it in the rules? I'm going to push green right now.
You press your page button.
Can I press the page button?
Representative Waller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that all Republicans push green now. All Republicans push green, please.
Someone raise the call. Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the call be raised.
Seeing no objection, the call will be raised.
Yeah, I could have done that.
You guys know where Scott is? Okay. I'll probably excuse him. We're going to vote. Dicky Lee, you want to move to thirds?
Yeah, we'll move to thirds.
Are we going to do both together? We're doing both school finance and...
Yeah, you need to.
Are we both education bills?
We do what with
We do both education bills? Where's Scott?
Oh, you want to do both of
I
them?
don't know. Millie?
Hey, Ron.
No, I know. Do you want to do both?
Two new businesses. Okay. These are two new.
How many? I can't remember where to go get this. Because there's 16 here. We don't have this one. We really have not.
Oh.
Yeah.
Del Grosso? Well, it's also, I don't know, we have a good agreement right now, and I wonder if we have I think maybe just send both of them, because we can always adhere, because they're both in decent enough shape that we can adhere. Okay, let's send both of them over. Okay, move to thirds. Move thirds first. Okay. Did I recess? No. Okay, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House proceed out of order for consideration of third reading of bills, final passage.
Seeing no objection, the House will proceed out of order for consideration of third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Bill 1159.
On what? 13?
1154? I don't have that one. Hold on. You gave me the wrong. Hold on, let's get this all right. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1354.
House Bill 1354 by Representatives Buckner and Gardner.
Aguilar.
Also, Senator Aguilar, concerning the ability of a county clerk and recorder to seek judicial review of final action by the Secretary of State relating to elections.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1354 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1354 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. And members, the court rule is relaxed. Representatives Hamner and Priola. Close the machine with 50 aye votes, 15 no votes, 0 excused and 0 absent. House Bill 1354 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1292.
House Bill 1292, Representatives Henry and Murray, L. Senator Johnson, concerning monies allocated to the state elementary and secondary public school system in connection with requiring increased supporting of the use of public monies in public schools, increasing the funding for public school capital construction, increasing the funding for Colorado READ Act, and making an appropriation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1292 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1292 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote.
Hey, Holbert.
Representatives Buck and Buck. Representative Buck. Close the machine with 51 aye. Okay. What? Representative Del Grosso, you canceled out your vote, so yeah, so you're a yes. So 51 aye votes, 14 no votes, 0 excused and 0 absent. House Bill 1292 is passed. Co-sponsors.
I guess. Yeah.
Close the machine. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to be removed as a sponsor on 1292, please.
Representative Scott will be removed as a co-sponsor to 1292. Representative Swam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to have my name removed as a co-sponsor of 1292.
Representative Swam will be removed as a co-sponsor to House Bill 1292. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Bill 1298.
House Bill 1298 by Representatives Hamner and Buckner, also Senators Kerr and Stedman, concerning the financing of public schools and in connection with making and reducing appropriations.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1298 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1298 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Gardner and Giroux. Close the machine. With 39 aye votes, 26 no votes, 0 excused and 0 absent, House Bill 1298 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of the House Bill 1159.
House Bill 1159 by Representatives Young and Dorr, all Senators Schwartz and Crowder, concerning a state sales and use tax exemption for components used in biogas production systems.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1159 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1159 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Should all vote for this. You're all full of biogas. Okay, I'll find myself $2 for a bad joke. Close the machine. With 54 aye votes, 11 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, House Bill 1159 is passed. Co-sponsors. Can you give me change? Close the machine. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House proceed out of order for consideration of Senate amendments to House bills.
See no objection, the House will proceed out of order for consideration of Senate amendments to House bills. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of the House Bill 1149. Oh, sorry, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to lay over House Bill 1149 to April 14.
See no objection, House Bill 1149 will be laid over to April 14th. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of the House Bill 1299.
House Bill 1299, Representative Tyler, also Senator Todd, concerning the repeal of a 6-year limitation on applying a salvage brand to a motor vehicle whose cost of being repaired exceeds the value of the vehicle without the recent damage.
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House concur with Senate resolutions to House Bill 1299.
Please explain what the useless, redundant, and obsolete body did.
Mr. Speaker, in this case, what they did was useless and redundant, and they said any cars over 32 years old would not be subject to the salvage title. The collector car people wanted to do that. It was pretty much pointless, but that's okay. We'll just let it go at that.
Is there further discussion? Representative Swam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'll wait till we get to the bill.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, the question for the House is to concur in Senate amendments to House Bill 1299. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives May, Pabon. Close the machine with 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent. The House concurs in Senate amendments to House Bill 1299. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the repassage of House Bill 1299 as amended.
Seeing no, oh, sorry, Representative Swam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I know we're far into this process, but I urge caution on this bill. When we remove this 6-year time limit on this bill, if a consumer owns an automobile that is in an accident and suffers only a cosmetic damage, it will immediately be designated as salvage, as I understand this bill. And that is going to dramatically reduce the value of the car to that consumer. Because so anyway, as I understand the bill, I urge caution on this bill, and I'm not going to vote for it.
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just quickly, Representative Swam, that's not the correct information. If you, first of all, if your car is totaled and the insurance company says you can keep it, if you keep it, it does not have a salvage title, regardless of the condition it's in. You can keep it and drive it for another 10 years, no problem, no salvage title. You can sell it at the end of that term, no salvage title. If it is totaled by the insurance company and you keep it, and they sell it at auction, and it's just damage that's cosmetic, it still does not have to have a salvage title according to 42-6-102-17A1. So I would say there's some misinformation that's out there. If you like your car, you truly can keep it, and it only loses value if it goes to resale at an auction. And even then, it doesn't necessarily lose value in that case. And also, there's a good aftermarket for people, like a nice cottage industry, who repair cars and clean the salvage title and sell them at a pretty darn good price. I was talking to one of the state troopers this morning, and there's 4 or 5 cars a day out at the Golden Center that are being retitled with a clear title after an inspection and sold in the market for people at really good value. So this is a good bill. Please vote yes.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question for the House is the repassage of House Bill 1299 as amended. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Conti and Landgraf. Close the machine. With 44 aye votes, 21 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the House repasses House Bill 1299 as amended. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. We'll now proceed to our next order of business. Going back to second reading of bills, special orders. Representative Lee. Continuation of special orders? You've heard the motion, seeing no objection. The House will resolve itself in the committee of the whole for continuation of special orders. Representative Lee will take the chair.
Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House. Okay.
Oh, there's going to be.
Yeah. The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there's request for reading of a bill at length. Committee amendments will not be read unless requested, as they are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and not read unless requested. Bills will be laid over upon the motion of the majority leader. The code rule is relaxed. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1279.
House Bill 1279, Representatives Primavera and Young, all Senators Heath and Sheffield, concerning the creation of a state income tax credit to reimburse a business for personal property taxes paid in the state.
Representative Primavera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1279, the Appropriations Committee report, the Finance Committee report, and the Business, Labor, Economic, and Workforce Development report.
Thank you, Representative Primavera. To the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Appropriation Committee report did a couple of things. It delayed the income tax credit for business personal property tax by 1 year, from January 2014 to January 2015, and maintained it for 5 years. And it also reduced the cap on taxable business personal property from $25,000 to $15,000. And it also took the money out of the Controlled Maintenance Trust Fund. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What was the middle part?
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
I was concerned.
The Appropriations Committee report is passed. Representative Primavera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee report basically took care of a lot of issues that the nonprofits had with the bill, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Finance Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Finance Committee report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The Finance Committee report is adopted. to the Business, Labor, Economic, and Workforce Development Committee report. Representative Primavera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This basically said that a taxpayer couldn't claim a tax credit under this section for delinquent property taxes that were owed for a prior property tax year, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Business Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Business Committee report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The Business Committee report is adopted. Representative Young to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, members, this bill is a step in the right direction to deal with the issue around a tax that I know many businesses really don't like. That's business personal property tax. Many others have tried to deal with this. It's a rather thorny issue to deal with, and we, I think, have come up with a creative solution. We are providing a tax credit for those businesses that have $15,000 or less of business personal property, and the bill does, the tax credit does sunset in 5 years. It's effective January 1st, 2015 for the 2014 tax year. So we think it's a step in the right direction. It's not a permanent solution, but it does move us down the road towards solving this thorny problem, and I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1279? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I rise in support of House Bill 14-1279. We heard this in the Business Committee, and this is an issue that many businesses have talked about for years in our state. And we had Tom Clark come down from the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce. He knows that if anyone is an expert in this area where we need to give businesses some relief on the business personal property tax, and I believe this is a step in the right direction, so I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The one question I had on this, we had a conversation in appropriations, and I know we're not on the Appropriations Committee report, about trying to scale this up in the out years. Was that conversation ever held in committee? Did you all have a talk about that? Was it just, was there any interest in scaling this thing up so that we don't just as I recall, we do a 5-year review. Was there any conversation about tiering this thing up so that we could give business a little bit of help in the out years?
Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Giroux. I think there is some interest in that, and we still have to go through the Senate to finish the bill, and we'll check to see if the Senate sponsors are interested in that kind of work.
Is there any, Mr. Minority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the sponsors for bringing forth this 1279 and dealing with the business personal property tax issue. And as we heard conversation, that there's been several bills that have been brought forward over the last few years dealing with business personal property tax, and I won't say that those were all Republican bills and that they all died, because that'll get partisan, and I don't want to do that here today. But I do want to thank the sponsors for seeing the light, and actually the Finance Committee, which has killed all of those Republican bills the last 4 years in there, that actually finally this year passed the business personal property tax bill out of their committee. So I want to thank the sponsors and then thank the members of the Finance Committee for passing this bill out. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Representative Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for the record, I brought a bill with Representative Holbert on business personal property tax, and it was killed, and I was on it, and I just want to make the record clear on that.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, colleagues, I would like to thank you all for killing that bill that Representative Kagan was on last year. I just really want to thank you for that.
Is there any, Representative Sane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I seem to remember a similar bill last year I presented in Finance. So I'm so glad we've seen the light and are passing something extremely similar this year. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1279? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1279. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? House Bill 1279 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1036. 1317.
House Bill 1317, Representative Duran, all Senators Nicholson and Gonzalez, concerning modifications to the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program in connection with aligning eligibility and authorization, addressing affordability, reducing copayments, improving provider reimbursement rates, increasing access to quality care, and improving technology infrastructure and administration.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move committee reports for Public Health, the Appropriations Committee dated April 4th, the Appropriations Committee dated April 10th, and the bill.
To the Appropriations Committee report of your choice.
Okay.
Representative Duran.
The one that's dated April 10th, I'd like to go ahead and begin with the Appropriations Committee that was adopted April 10th. And so I ask for your support on this. Essentially, we've had lots of conversations with the counties around making sure that we do not have an unfunded mandate. And the change that we made this morning is a good place to be from a policy and fiscal perspective. So I ask for your support.
Is there any further? Representative Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we heard this in committee, and I was a reluctant yes on it originally because I was concerned about our county actually working through some of these issues. There were still some things that were not okay with the bill. That's been resolved. I think we've come to a good meeting of the minds on it. I think that everyone has been at the table, and so instead of reluctant yes, I will likely be a good support on it. And I'm really glad that we had our counties and even all our child care reps at the table to make this work. So thank you, and I rise in support of the bill.
Is there any further discussion on the April 10 Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, all in favor of the Appropriations Committee report, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The Appropriations Committee report is passed. Representative Duran, to the Public Health report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So to the public health report, essentially what we did in committee is we made a couple of technical changes around the department promulgating rules and the amount of time that they would have to be able to do that. But I also have an amendment that I'm going to go ahead and move now to the Public Health Care and Human Services Committee report, which is L011, and I ask that it be displayed. L011.
The amendment L11 has been printed and is on your desks and is now properly displayed. Please proceed to the amendment. Representative Duran.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This amendment was a result of weeks and weeks of negotiating with the counties to come up with compromise. And with this amendment, CCI is in support of the amendment, and so I ask for your support as well.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L011. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Amendment L11 is passed. Representative Duran.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. To the bill.
To the bill, please.
This bill was brought forward in an effort to reform the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program because of the need to try and make child care more affordable to more Colorado families.
No.
Oh.
That amendment should just pass struck the public.
Oh, it did. Okay. Yeah.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is correct. So the April 10th committee report struck the April 4th committee report. Public Health committee report has been passed, and so we are appropriately to the bill. So with that, I ask for your support to try and make child care more affordable for more Colorado families.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1317? Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Duran, I have a couple of questions. So My first question is, the amendment that we just passed, does that change the fiscal note in any way, shape, or form because of what we're lightening some of the burden on the county? So is this going to change the fiscal note? But my second question is, and this was, I didn't hear this in public health, and my one concern that I have with this piece of legislation is we are setting up tiered reimbursement rates for the daycare center. So I guess my concern is with tiered rates, are we basically going to set up the larger daycare centers that have a lot more resources that can go out and meet some of the new standards? They're going to get the higher reimbursement, but maybe some of the smaller daycare centers that might not, they're still providing good service to the kids, they're still doing a good job, but maybe not have those extra resources to meet these new higher standards. And so therefore they're basically at a competitive disadvantage. So why are we going to tiered rates now instead of keeping all of those rates the same? Because, you know, the way, so sorry, I'm just saying the way it is now, a lot of people consider this scare care, because the reality is the rates are so low that basically the only people that are taking a lot of these kids with these low reimbursement rates are some of the, what some people might say, more of the scarier type of facilities, because it's like they're the only ones that'll take these kids. So what I'm saying is, why are we not raising all of the reimbursement rates to allow everybody to enjoy the higher provider rate increase instead of doing tiered?
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I want to start with your first part of your question, and that is regarding the budget. So what we have done is in the bill as is with the appropriation, we have made...
Hold on for just a second. Members, the noise level is getting to the point where people in the well can't hear. If we could keep it down, it would be much appreciated. Thank you. Please proceed, Representative Duran.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I want to go ahead and begin with the first part of your question, Minority Leader Del Grosso, and that is the issue with regard to the budget. You will see, as it should be in your bill folder, a proposal that was dated March 17, 2014, actually fiscal note dated March 17, 2014. And as the bill was originally introduced, it was much, much, much more expensive. You know, we really had high hopes of trying to reform the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program to help more women and families go from welfare to work, and ultimately we had to compromise on that. And so you will see an updated fiscal note dated March 27th that has been cut in more than half to be able to make some necessary changes. With regards to your question of tiered reimbursement is actually very important, because we want to be able to incentivize providers to be able to make sure that young kids have access to quality childcare. That quality piece is huge, because when we think about making sure that our kids, and many times at-risk kids, kids in poverty, have access to childcare, it's important that there is quality associated with it so that they are able to be school ready when they do begin kindergarten. And so the policy there has been based on that effort.
Mr. Minority Leader.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Representative Duran, I guess I'm confused. I'm not here arguing against quality daycare. What I'm asking is, why did we set up a tiered reimbursement rate for the providers? Why is it not one? I mean, why are we incentivizing certain providers and we're going to give them a bigger bump than what we're giving some of the other ones? Because there might be several daycare providers in the same community that are both doing a great job of providing quality daycare to those folks that you just talked about. I'm just saying, why do we have a split rate when we don't do a split rate now?
Representative Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Minority Leader. So what was done prior was that there was money set aside for the smaller daycare centers within counties through a different funding source, because during interim committees I brought this up. How do smaller centers get ahead on the quality control issue? They don't have the money that the bigger ones do. There is money per county set aside for that. And so I think they are able to apply, qualify, because when we were given grants for this, and I think one was Race to the Top, that allowed our smaller centers to do that. And that was part of the application process. So it's not that our current daycares don't get a chance in terms of on tiered. The other thing is that are being looked at across the border, absences, amount of children per child care center. And on some areas, I do have to say, I think a lot of our smaller daycares are doing as good, if not even better. So I want to assure you that, because a lot of us have asked the question about smaller daycares, that they're not out in the cold, that they're not out in the cold. So that's why I'm in support of the bill. One of the reasons.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I was pretty obvious in appropriations that I don't support this bill, and I'm not supporting it because I don't care about child care. I'm not supporting it because we can't afford it. And if you look at the out years, that $20 million fiscal note, and you know, this fiscal note reminds me of another fiscal note we had last year having to do with corrections employees, and then the Joint Budget Committee had to come back and fix it because the bill was screwed up. And when you take a fiscal note that starts at 20 million or so, and then you knock it down to 8 million, and you make the Joint Budget Committee wait while you're knocking it down to 8 million, because obviously those 5 other people don't have anything better to do than wait for the chair to come back, I think you end up making mistakes. And I think this bill is a mistake, so I'll be a no vote. And you know what? I'll try not to come back down here again, because I know there's a particular lobbyist out there that's going to wring my neck.
Representative Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I stand in strong support for House Bill 1317, and I want to thank Representative Duran for thinking big and thinking bold in support of struggling families. This is a good bill. This is a great bill, especially as it relates to women and families. I don't know if you've ever heard of the cliff effect, but the cliff effect is when you might be working and you're receiving public assistance, and then all of a sudden you might get a 15-cent or 50-cent increase in your wages. And then when that happens, you can go off the cliff and lose some of your benefits as it relates to child care assistance. This bill is a big deal. This bill is a big deal because women win, families win. I had the privilege of being on the Poverty Reduction Task Force this summer, and we heard from women and struggling families. And the number one thing that they asked us to address was child care assistance. And that's exactly what this bill does. If you know anything, one of the most significant expenses that working family experience, it's daycare costs. And so what this bill is going to do, it's going to provide some relief for those struggling families. I want to thank Representative Duran for just stepping up to this very important issue, because this is a big deal and this is a great bill. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1317? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1317. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. House Bill 1317 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Sorry, we're doing one more bill for you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the committee proceed out of order for consideration of Senate Bill 160.
Seeing no objection, the committee will proceed out of order for House Bill 1060. Excuse me, Senate Bill 160. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 160.
Senate Bill 160 by Senator Newell, also Representative Primavera, concerning moving limitations on transitional living program for a person with a brain injury.
Representative Primavera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 160. There is no committee report.
Representative Primavera to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Transitional Living Program provides brain injury clients with intensive rehab services in a home or community-based setting and allows them to resume activities of daily living, included but not limited to training and supervision of self-care, medication management, communication and interpersonal skills, socialization, sensory motor skills, and money management. This is a really critical service for people with brain injuries and allows them to transition back to their homes after hospitalization rather than go into a nursing home, which is much more expensive. By accessing these vital services at the right time post-injury, individuals are able to receive the treatment necessary to drastically improve their neurological functioning and recovery for the remainder of their lives. This makes a simple change to remove language within a current state statute that limits the client's ability to receive services for only 6 to 12 months post-injury. People recover much longer than that. This passed out of the Senate with unanimous support on the consent calendar. There's no fiscal impact, and I ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 160? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 160. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Senate Bill 160 is adopted. Madam Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1036.
House Bill 1036, Representatives Waller and Sane, all Senators King and Johnston, concerning drunk driving offenses.
Thank you. Representative Waller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1036, the Judiciary Committee report, and the Appropriations Committee report.
Representative Waller to the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We appropriated dollars in the Appropriations Committee today. It's about $2.9 million of general fund obligation for next year. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative, Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank members of the Joint Budget Committee on both sides of but in both chambers on both sides of the aisle for working so hard to find this money. This is an expensive bill. This is an expensive cost to incarcerate these many offenders. And this money just isn't found. It takes a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication to make sure that this is a priority. And I want to thank the JBC members. I want to thank members of this caucus. I want to thank the Speaker and the leadership in both the House and Senate for helping Representative Waller and helping Representative Sane find this money. Because, again, there's a hefty fiscal note. There's a lot of cost, and credit needs to be given where credit is due.
Representative Waller.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank Representative Pabon for thanking all of these people that participated in this process to find the dollars to be able to make this happen.
Representative Waller, hold on just a minute. Members, it is really getting loud in here. It's very hard to hear. Can we take our side conversations off the floor? Representative Waller, please continue.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And for the record, it wasn't me being loud this time. So I just want to put that out there. Normally, I'm the one that's getting in trouble for being too loud on the floor. But yeah, no, I agree with Representative Pabon. There is a cost related to this. There is certainly a cost related to protecting Colorado citizens this way. As we all know, over 100 people lost their lives in DUI-related traffic accidents last year, and it does cost money to engage in the protection of those individuals in the state of Colorado. And I appreciate the fact that the Joint Budget Committee and that the Appropriations Committee agrees now that we need to do this. You know, we started these discussions way back in June of this year to try to find the dollars to make this be able to happen. And I'll tell you, it was a little nip and tuck there for a while, but I am glad that we were able to see this through to fruition. I'm glad that we were able to find the dollars to make this happen. And so I, too, pass on my sincere gratitude to all the people that worked with us to make this a priority for the people of the state of Colorado.
Representative Sane.
I vote on the Appropriations Committee report.
Excuse me, Representative Sane. Oh. Is there any further discussions on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Appropriations Committee report. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. Representative Waller to the Judiciary Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, one of the compromises in this bill was to add an exhaustion of remedies piece to this legislation to make sure that we're doing all we can to get these people on the path to recovery before they get sent to prison. This committee report is nothing more than adding that amendment, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I support the good work of the Judiciary Committee and want to thank all of them, I'm just kidding. But I do want to say that this is important to have an exhaustion of remedies because there are situations, as we know, where substance abuse, mental health issues drive this behavior, and unless and until we have a diagnosis and an understanding of what's truly at play, then we can't provide the right treatment, even if there is incarceration. And man, this committee is really having a good time this afternoon. It must be 5 o'clock on a Thursday, but I support what the work that the committee did. I thank the committee for their hard work, and ask for an aye vote on the Judiciary Committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. The Judiciary Committee report is adopted. Representative Waller to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would like to also thank the Majority Leader for his comments, the JBC and the committees for their hard work on this bill, and really doing a favor to the citizens of Colorado, because this is being compassionate to all citizens of Colorado. When folks are caught with their first DUI, usually they've driven drunk 80 times. So this is compassionate to both sides of the equation, both to the victims who may ask, why wasn't something done the first, third, 5th, 10th, 20th time, and also for those who would commit these acts because obviously at your 20th DUI, you no longer are responding to conventional treatments. They are looking for a barrier, some kind of boundary to make them stop. They won't stop until otherwise. And this bill does provide that and may urge them to get their lives back on track. So thank you so much, and I urge an aye vote.
Representative McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also rise in support of this bill. It was kind of funny. I was having dinner with some friends, and one of them is a district court judge in Denver. And unprompted by me, she just said, you know what, we need a felony DUI law in Colorado. And she started telling me about a recent case she had heard in which a fellow continually got DUIs and ended up causing just terrible losses in an accident. And, you know, I started talking to her about it, and I said, well, I agree with you, but I'm not sure it should be a felony 4. Because that's such a, you know, a harsh penalty for usually people who have substance abuse problems. And so we kind of let it go at that. And then she emailed me a few days later and she said, you know, I've been thinking about that, and felony 4 is appropriate for this kind of case. And she explained why a felony 6 or 5 wouldn't really be enough of a deterrent or enough of a penalty for people who cause this kind of terrible destruction over and over again. So given I was already predisposed to support a DUI felony, but I wasn't sure about the level of felony. But after getting her input, it really made me realize that this is a very serious offense. And, you know, we've talked about the fact that people need treatment, and they get treatment, and it still doesn't seem to keep them from driving. So that's the issue is, yes, I agree people need treatment, but they don't need to drive if they're going to drink, if they're going to continue drinking. So I strongly support this bill and ask for an aye vote.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to thank everybody who's done all the thank yous up here. And I want to ditto that. It's been a great thank you session on this bill, and I'm glad that everybody's glad. And, you know, if we pipe down a little bit and listen, we'll all get in on these wonderful thank yous. So thank you very much for being quiet for just a few minutes. This is a good bill. It's a good bipartisan bill. And I ask for a yes vote.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader. Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also rise in support of this piece of legislation as well. We need to do everything we can to try to keep these people off the streets. Seeing as this body refuses to pass a bill that would actually, where if you have a vehicular assault, like if you kill somebody with a DUI, we had an opportunity to put stiffer penalties on that. We refused to pass that this year. But this will do a good job of helping to keep some of those people off the street. So thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1036. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. House Bill 1036 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1118.
House Bill 1118, Representative Wilson, also Senator Todd, concerning the creation of the Advanced Placement Incentives Pilot Program.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and may I also offer my thanks to all of those who are on House Bill 1036. Mr. Chair, I move House Bill 1118 and the Education and Appropriation Committee report.
Representative Wilson, to the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Appropriation Committee report amended the bill to actually lower the number of participating students to match the fiscal note. It also appropriated the money out of the State Education Fund and changed the title to include the appropriation. I ask for an aye vote on the Appropriations Committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. Representative Wilson, to the Education report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Education Committee report earlier amended 1118 to make it a smaller fiscal note, so it removed the and small from the rural and small, restricting it to the rural, and also it amended it to specify that the students who subsequently would take the AP exam, which means they would take the course and take the test, and I would urge an aye vote on the Education Committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the Education Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is passage of the Education Committee report. All in favor, please say aye. 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 All opposed, no. The Education Committee report is adopted. Representative Wilson, to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, colleagues, all of you heard an extended discussion of House Bill 1118 on the night of the long bill. It's a great opportunity to allow students across the state to be able to have access to the AP program. It is a pilot program. It does have a sunset on it, so if it's not taken up and utilized, it will sunset. It's a great opportunity for our kids, and I would recommend an aye vote.
Representative Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I couldn't help but come down and lend my voice in strong support of House Bill 1118. It's extremely important that kids, no matter where they're from, no matter what zip code in Colorado they live in, have access to advanced placement courses. When I was in high school, I remember only having 4 in my high school, 4 AP classes, and then going to a college where other students had 30 or more AP classes. And a lot of times those kids were able to finish their entire first year of college before they even walked in the door because they had access to those AP classes. It's important that we make sure that every kid in Colorado has the opportunity to challenge themselves and take advantage of these AP classes. Thank you, Representative Wilson, for bringing this bill.
Representative Mitz Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Representative Wilson, for bringing this bill. As you pointed out with the data you showed us during the budget debate, there are a number of counties that have zero, as districts and counties that have zero AP programs. And as Representative Moreno has just stated, these kinds of programs are critical for student success for all our students, but particularly so in school districts where there are fewer resources. So thank you very much. And yes, I urge a yes vote.
Representative Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I did in committee, in the Education Committee, I rise in support of this bill. It's an equity issue. Students should not be eliminated from the possibility of expanding their academic preparation because of where they live. And we should always keep that in mind when we're attending to the needs of students in our state.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I also rise in support of House Bill 1118. As a teacher, as some of you know, I think it's very difficult sometimes, especially in classrooms with a lot of kids, to enable to make sure that we're focusing on not just the kids who are struggling or kids who are somewhere in the middle, but some of the kids who are really more advanced. We need to make sure we're also challenging them and to make sure that they're also reaching their greatest potential. And so this bill is going to help some of those kids to make sure that they reach their potential. So I'm very grateful to Representative Wilson for bringing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Rosenthal. Is there any further discussion for Representative Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to those who rose in support. And I commend Representative Moreno on his comment because it points out what we really face. As he got up here and he said, I only had 4 of these courses, and these kids were coming and testifying on how many they had. 101 out of 178 school districts in Colorado have 0. Wow. So you had 4 times the number, Representative Moreno. So thank you for your support, and I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1118? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1118. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. House Bill 1118 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please, Madam Majority Leader. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1144, one bill.
Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1162.
House Bill 1162 by Representative Landgraf concerning protection of the victim of sexual assault cases, sexual assault in cases where a child was conceived as a result of the sexual assault in connection with making legislative changes in response to the study and the report of the recommendations from the Task Force on Children Conceived Through Rape.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the judiciary report.
And move the bill, please.
Oh, and I move House Bill 1162.
To the Judiciary Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have some amendments to the judiciary report if Representative Kagan would like to come down. Okay, the judiciary report. The Judiciary Report cleaned up language for Senate Bill 227. It added protections for those with disabilities. It made some consistent language. It ensured compliance with the Indian Welfare Act. And in the case of a sexual assault where there is clear and convincing evidence, it now allows for the severing of parental rights.
Representative Kagan.
And Mr. Chair and Representative Landgraf, thank you for bringing this bill. In the Judiciary Committee report, we considered the question of allowing a respondent in a case like this to concede the question of whether the child was conceived in rape, and to just voluntarily relinquish his parental rights instead of putting the child and the mother through a painful court proceeding. And to make that possible, is the purpose of Amendment L028, and I move Amendment L028 and ask that it be displayed. Members, you've had Amendment L028 on your desks for some time now because it is a more than one-page amendment, and it does make it possible for the parties to consent to the father relinquishing his parental rights voluntarily and then sparing the agony of a proceeding for the child and for the mother and relinquishing his parental rights, and I urge its adoption.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 028 to the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment 28 to the Judiciary Committee report. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The Amendment 28 to the Judiciary Committee report is adopted. Representative Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Landgraf and I have agreed to propose another amendment. I move Amendment L029 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment 029 is properly displayed and moved. Please proceed to the amendment.
Members, this amendment does two things. The first thing it does is it puts the child at the center of these proceedings by making sure that at the earliest possible stage, a guardian ad litem is appointed for the child before litigation really gets deeply underway, so that the child's interests are represented adequately throughout the proceeding. And it also does something else, members. It shortens the period of time from which, between the petition being filed and the trial on the merits starting, from 180 days, as it is in the Judiciary Committee report, to 120 days to get things moving along faster. And I urge adoption of L029.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L029? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L029 to the Judiciary Committee report. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. All opposed? L029 to the Judiciary report is adopted.
Who really cares? Let's just vote.
To the Judiciary Committee report. Any further?
Nope.
The question before us then is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report as amended. All in favor of the amended Judiciary Committee report, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The Judiciary Committee report is adopted. Representative Landgraf to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1162 protects the victim of a sexual assault when a child is conceived. I would ask for an aye vote.
Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this is a very important bill. It addresses an issue that may be rare, but nonetheless can be great agony for the victim. So I would ask strong support of this bill. Thank you.
Representative McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also rise in support of this bill. I think hopefully it is a rare situation, but in those situations where it does occur that a child is conceived as a result of a rape, sexual assault, this does give the mother the option of asking for termination of parental rights by the person who committed the sexual assault. So again, it's probably a rare situation where this would happen, but there are situations where it could happen. So this, I think, is a good bill. It does provide a legal process for this to occur so that the person who is accused of having committed the sexual assault does have a legal proceeding, can be represented by counsel if that person chooses to try and assert parental rights. But it does give the victim of a sexual assault the ability to not have to worry about someone coming around later claiming parental rights over a child that was conceived as a result of a rape. So I would urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1162? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1162. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye! All opposed, no. House Bill 1162 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1144.
House Bill 1144, Representative Gardner, also Senator Johnston, concerning measures to improve the performance of district attorneys.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1144, the Judiciary Committee report, and the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Representative Gardner. To the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this bill, the underlying bill, is concerning measures to improve the performance of district attorneys. Originally, it consisted of a piece that would have given some amount of funding to counties to set a floor voluntarily for DA compensation. That has been taken out by the Appropriations Committee report. But what is left is the other piece of the bill, which is $350,000 for training of deputy district attorneys, particularly in those areas that are rural and need training to get up on the power curve for the very difficult cases that occur there as well as they do in urban areas. I ask for an aye vote on the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Representative Gardner. Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Appropriations Committee report. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. Representative Gardner, to the Judiciary Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, members, actually, the Appropriations Committee report amends the Judiciary Committee report, and the Judiciary Committee report is a nullity at this point, but the way the amendments were done, we do need to move the report because Appropriations amended that, but the piece that was really addressed in Appropriations is largely gone. There is a piece of this that concerns dispersing the money to the Attorney General, and then the Attorney General dispersing it to the Colorado District Attorney's Council for the training, and that is a piece of the bill that is still there, and I think was dealt with some in the Judiciary Committee report. I ask for an aye vote on the report.
Is there any further discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The Judiciary Committee report is adopted. Representative Gardner, to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, as I said, this bill is now $350,000 of funding that ultimately goes to the Colorado District Attorney's Council for training and other services to assist deputy district attorneys throughout the state, with some focus, I believe, on rural areas, and I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Representative Gardner for this bill and his commitment to making sure that criminal defense and criminal prosecution is effectively and justly and fairly and competently and professionally carried out throughout the state of Colorado. And so thank you, Representative Gardner. I urge an aye vote on this bill.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1144? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1144. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. The House Bill 1144 is passed. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1202.
House Bill 1202 by Representative Scott, all Senators Todd and Sheffield, concerning accountability requirements for school districts for which the State Board of Education waives statewide testing requirements.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1202, the Education Committee report, and the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Representative Scott. To the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Appropriations Committee report did not amend the bill. They did approve the appropriations, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, say no. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. Representative Scott, to the Education Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think an appropriate motion would have been pizza. We are seeming to lose members rapidly, but that's a good time to bring up a bill. House Bill 1202, the committee passed unanimously. It's a bill that I believe, and I think lots of members in this building believe, and outside this chamber believe, that it was time to do some looking at the testing of children in our school districts. As we all know, there has been...
Representative Scott, are you on the Education Committee report?
Yes.
Okay.
Please
proceed.
I'm sorry. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Yes, it was a strike below, and we did decide to develop a task force to look at exactly what I was talking about before. And to carry on, I believe this bill is something that's going to be very, very helpful because we're finally doing something that we haven't done for a long time in Colorado, is focus specifically on the children. That is what is important, and I would ask for an aye vote on 1202.
The question before us is the adoption of the Education Committee report. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The Education Committee report is adopted. Representative Scott, to the bill now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would ask for an aye vote on 1202. As I said before, it's something that we've needed to do for a long time, and I very much look forward to the results, and I think it's going to make a tremendous difference as we go forward in the future of the kids for the state of Colorado. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I'd ask for an aye vote just so that we can get Representative Scott out of the well.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1202. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1202 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1333.
House Bill 1333, Representatives Fisher and Quorum, all Senators Schwartz and Harvey, concerning the funding of Colorado Water Conservation Board projects in connection with making appropriation.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move House Bill 1333, and there are no committee reports.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Bill 1333 is our annual appropriations bill for the Colorado Water Conservation Board. This is kind of an annual projects bill that we do every year. It contains, this year's bill contains $136 million in funding for state water projects and other programs within the Colorado Water Conservation Board that are vital to securing and sustaining the water resources of the state of Colorado. So I ask your favorable adoption of this bill.
Representative Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good bill, vote yes. Good projects.
Representative Sonnenberg.
Here, Randy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L001 and ask for it to be displayed.
Amendment 001 has been submitted and is properly displayed. To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, it is a challenge to have water storage, and since we don't have a lot of money to do it, we need to introduce those experts that know how to build dams. The dam builders themselves, beavers. And we want to change this section's name to the Beaver Act. Beaver Eat All Vegetation Along Every River Act. Members, here's an opportunity for us to have storage and have beavers build the storage for us. The reintroduction of those beavers is a good thing for Colorado. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Corum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I absolutely oppose this bill. A message coming like this from a representative of the Flatlands of Sterling, I tell you, members, he's no beaver expert.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also rise in opposition to this amendment, as he has not taken into consideration the black-footed ferret. I believe the black-footed ferret is an enemy of the beaver, and you would not gain anything. And I think also the Preble mouse would be a problem. I've asked for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Mitch Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm so sorry, Representative Sonnenberg. I do advise a no vote on this. In fact, there are plenty of beavers in Routt County, and if you ever need them, you can come and get them.
Representative Sonnenberg.
Well, gee, thank you. I meant it all in the best. And since I'm not an expert on beavers, Mr. Chair, I ask that my amendment be withdrawn.
On motion of Representative Sonnenberg, the amendment is withdrawn. Representative Fisher.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Gosh, Representative Sonnenberg, I was going to come down and say this would be a friendly amendment, especially if each of the beavers were required to have a Section 404 permit before they build their dams.
Enough already.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1333? Representative Mitch Bush.
Mr. Chair, sorry to be so serious, but I would strongly urge a yes vote on this bill. These water projects help out rural Colorado, urban Colorado, suburban Colorado. They help all of Colorado. So please vote yes. Thank you.
Representative McLaughlin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I would again ask strong support for this bill. As Representative Ms. Bush just pointed out, it's a statewide projects bill. It improves water projects across the entire state of Colorado, and I'd ask for your strong support. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1333? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1333. All in favor, please signify by saying yes. All opposed say no. House Bill 1333 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1304 to the end of the calendar.
On motion, seeing no objection, on motion of the Majority Leader, House Bill 1304 is laid over till the end of the calendar. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1344.
House Bill 1344, Representative Rosenthal, Senator Talk Shop, concerning the use of electronic means to document transactions related to the business of insurance.
Representative Rosenthal, at your leisure, sir. We have a fast-moving docket.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair. I was not aware that we would be laying over the prior bill. So, Mr. Chair, I move House Bill 1344 and the committee report from Business Committee.
To the Business Labor Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have that. Actually, can I ask for a recess, please?
We'll take a brief recess. The House will come back to order. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1344, 3 bills.
On motion of the Majority Leader, seeing no objection, House Bill 1344 will be laid over 3 bills. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1322.
House Bill 1322, Representative McLaughlin, also Senator Roberts, concerning the Colorado Probate Code.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Provided, yes, it looks like somebody's ready here. So I move to lay over House Bill 1322 to the end of the calendar.
On motion of the Majority Leader and seeing no objection, House Bill 1322 will be laid over to the end of the calendar. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1175.
House Bill 1175, Representatives Fields and Pabon, also Senator Johnston, concerning studying strategies for successful ongoing recruitment of minority teachers in public schools.
Representative Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1175. There is no committee, the appropriations report.
And an education. And the Education Committee report?
It's appropriations, isn't it?
Education.
The education report has one amendment, and it was an amendment to include.
Could you move the Education report, please?
Move the Education Committee report.
Please proceed.
Thank you.
Appropriations Committee.
Members, the committee report identified the need to have the report that we're asking, the findings, to be reported back to the House Education Committee as well as the Senate Committee.
Representative Fields, can you hold for just a second? Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so we're doing the Appropriations Committee report, and all that did was set aside the $50,000 to fund the study. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, all in favor of the Appropriations Committee report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the Education Committee report. Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the Education Committee report just indicated that the department shall present the report, its findings, to the Education Committees on or before January 30th, 2015. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Education Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Education Committee report. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. The Education Committee report is adopted. Representative Fields, to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move Amendment L004 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment 004 has been submitted and is properly displayed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I'm asking that we change the title of this bill. Moving forward, if it passed, it should be known as the Aaliyah Law. And let me explain why. Can I have the picture displayed of Aaliyah, please? This is Aaliyah, and she is a constituent of mine, and she wrote this letter. I'm not going to read the whole letter to you because it's 3 pages. She first of all wrote the letter to the school district, and after the school district did not respond in a timely manner, then it got into my hands. And basically, this is what the one paragraph in the letter says. It says, I have gone to this school for over 5 years, but I've never had a teacher who looks like me, a black teacher. In fact, I don't think we have any black teachers at our school. Will I ever have a black teacher while I'm here in the school district? I know that most of the students are white, but there are many black students, and why can't we have a role model for us? Has a black person ever walked into this school district and asked for a job as a teacher? If so, how come they didn't get hired? So remember, this bill, basically what it's going to do it's going to require the Colorado Department of Education to convene a study on what we can do to attract teachers of color. But because it was her idea, I'm asking that as we move forward, that we name this bill after Aaliyah. And I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment to the House Bill 1175? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment 004. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Amendment 004 is adopted. Representative Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, I've already explained the bill. It's just going to commission a study so that we can increase the number of teachers of color across our state. They will come back and to report to this body specific strategies to recruit and retain high-quality teachers of color. I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and want to thank Representative Fields and all those who came in support of this bill in committee and beyond. The concept is simply this. Let's study how to make those teachers who teach look like those who are learning in the classroom, because we know it has an impact on self-esteem, morale, looking at higher aspirations and goals, and that's what this study sets out to do. So we want to make sure that we have data, a Colorado solution for a Colorado problem, and that's what this bill does. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1175? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1175. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. House Bill 1175 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1205.
House Bill 1205 by Representative Wright and also Senator Crowder concerning the Veterans Assistance Grant Program.
Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I am pleased to move House Bill 1205 and the Appropriations Committee report.
Representative Wright to Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in the Appropriations Committee, we did add an amendment to increase the Division of Veterans Affairs by 0.4 FTE in order to administer the grants from the Veterans Assistance Grant Program. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. Representative Wright to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I think you have become familiar with the Veterans Assistance grants that we've been doing over the last couple of years. There's been a fund of $1 million each year for these grants that go to small nonprofits and other organizations who help veterans outside of the normal channels, shall we say, of like the VA and other organizations like that. And so what this bill basically does is simply codify that fund and create a place for those monies to go, as well as gifts and grants and other donations that might come into that fund, which we do believe will happen. So I'll make a long story short. This is for our veterans. It provides a lot of needed services, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1205? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1205. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. House Bill 1205 is adopted. I believe we're back to Representative Rosenthal. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1344.
House Bill 1344 by Representative Rosenthal, also Senator Talktrop, concerning the use of electronic means to document transactions related to the business of insurance.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I renew my motion for House Bill 1344 and the committee report.
to the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What we did in committee is we removed a part that mentioning how insurance companies might be able to charge fees for any notices that they may call in. If they're already receiving emails because they opted in to receive only notices by emails, and then they call in for a notice, then they will not be charged.
Is there any further discussion on the Business Labor Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Business, Labor, Economic, and Workforce Development Committee report. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, say no. The committee report is adopted. Representative Rosenthal to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And basically what this bill does is it allows for consumers to opt in and ask that all notices from their insurance company be sent to them. Now, these are notices that do not have any identifiable information about the consumer, not their name, not their social security number, not their address, nothing like that. Just technical notices be sent to them by email in electronic form. So this would help with not cutting down trees, so we'd retain some of our forests, which would be great. It also helps out insurance companies as a cost-saving measure, and it's purely a convenience issue. And again, members, this is for opting in. Anybody who would like to opt in order to receive those notices.
Representative Swam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I rise in support of this bill. It's not a mandate. I think for those consumers who want to use this feature, it's convenient. I think it's also economical for both the insurance companies and the consumers who ultimately pay the costs of these policies. So, Representative Rosenthal, I appreciate your carrying this bill. I rise in support. Thank you.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Swam. I do appreciate that support for the bill. At this time, I move L002 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment 002 has been properly moved and is displayed. Please proceed to the amendment, Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what this amendment does is it continues the work that we did in committee in order to ensure that there is no mention of fees that might be assessed if a consumer calls and says, look, I want a copy of that notice. Could you please send me one? I can't find it in my email box. I want something in the mail. Could you please send it to me? And actually, it was Representative Kraft Tharp who brought this issue to my attention. So I really have to thank her also very, very much for doing that. So this is just a cleanup, just to make sure that we strike any mention of an ability to charge fees.
Representative Kraft Tharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Rosenthal, for your flexibility on this issue. So, members, this is important because, as we know from the telecom bills, that we do not have broadband across the state at this point. So there are some people that do not have access to fast internet service to be able to get their electronic copies. And also a lot of our seniors and our elderly may not have access to computers to be able to get electronic copies. So this is important, Representative Rosenthal, for your compassion and making sure we don't charge those people a fee to get the paper copies. So thank you very much.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L002? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment 002 to House Bill 1344. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Amendment 002 is adopted. Representative Rosenthal to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And at this time, I ask for passage of House Bill 1344.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1344 as amended? Seeing none, the question... before us is the adoption of House Bill 1344. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. House Bill 1344 is adopted. Congratulations, Representative Rosenthal. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1294.
House Bill 1294 by Representative Murray, also Senators Stedman and John, concerning student data collection and privacy protections administered by the Department of Education.
Representative Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1294 and the Education Committee report.
Thank you, Representative Murray. To the Education Committee report.
In the report, we've added the word protection to the title. We add a requirement that CDE provide user-friendly information about the data sharing agreements and requires CDE to develop a data destruction policy. Also clarifies that CDE and its vendors may not use any data for commercial purposes and clarifies data sharing language. It adds guidelines to be developed by CDE for school districts. I urge an aye vote for the committee report.
Representative Murray.
And I move Amendment L013 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment L013 has been properly moved and is displayed. To the amendment, please, Representative Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is basically a series of word changes. The word guideline has been changed to guidance, the word policies to procedures, and the word requirements to recommendations.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L013? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L013 to House Bill 1294. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The amendment is adopted. Representative Murray, to the bill. To the Education Committee report.
Urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Education Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Education Committee report to House Bill 1294. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The Education Committee report is adopted. Representative Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L012 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment L012 has been properly moved and is displayed. To the amendment, Representative Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Line 1 removes redundant language. Lines 2 and 5 clarifies that higher ed can receive data. I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L012 to House Bill 1294? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L012. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The amendment is adopted. Representative Murray.
I move L016 and ask that it be displayed.
Thank you. L016 has been properly moved and is displayed. Representative Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In L016, we've changed an and to an or in line 1. In line 2 and 3, we strike the criminal act exemption. And in line 4, it clarifies in-state and out-of-state educational institutions. Urge an aye vote.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, you know, we've done a lot on education this year, and Representative Murray has worked very, very hard. She's worked across the aisles. She's been very, very diligent on this. And I just really appreciate the work that she's been doing. I appreciate the fact that she has a bill that's actually going to pass, and actually it's going to benefit the kids of Colorado. So I think we should rejoice the good hard work that she's made, and I ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L016 to House Bill 1294? Seeing none, the question before the House is the adoption of Amendment L016. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The amendment is adopted. Representative Murray.
One more time, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your patience. I move L015 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment L015 has been properly moved and is displayed. To the amendment.
What L015 does is it beefs up the description of personally identifiable data. We want to be perfectly clear that whenever someone looks at some kind of a specific data, they will say, wow, yes, that is definitely personal data. And this clarifies that language.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, this is a great amendment. The good thing about this amendment is there's no way anybody in the public school system would be confused with me, and that would be a bad thing if they were ever confused with me. For instance, Representative Duran and I, we look so much alike. People are constantly confusing us. And so with this amendment in the public school system, nobody would ever call Representative Duran Representative Giroux again. So I ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L015? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L015. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Amendment L015 is adopted. Representative Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the bill, right?
To the bill.
Thank you, sir. It is a real honor to present this bill to you. I think this is a topic of discussion, the privacy of the data in our student data systems throughout the state. I think it's a very difficult topic, and I think we have just begun to talk about what's happening in that regard. CDE has some good processes in place, but we don't have those in statute, and there are some things that they are not doing that they should be doing. So with this bill, we've worked with a variety of stakeholders to start the process of ensuring that our student private personal data is going to be taken care of appropriately at CDE. And what the bill does, it requires, it requires that the State Board of Education develop a data inventory and dictionary of data elements. It requires that CDE develop a privacy policy for regarding accessibility to personally identifiable data. It limits certain uses of personally identifiable student data, including disallowing sharing with the federal government. It requires that the CDE develop guidance to districts about the protection, sharing, and collection of personally identifiable data. So that's what the bill does. I think this is something that has worried parents. We had some wonderful moms who were also IT experts who came into committee. They had some ideas for some additional things that we might do at the school level. This is our start at the CDE at the state level to ensure privacy for our student data. I urge and I vote.
Thank you, Representative Murray. Representative Peniston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And colleagues, we heard this in the Education Committee. It came out 12-0 out of education. And this bill really does strike a great balance between collecting the data that we really need and taking care of the privacy issue with that data. So I ask for your aye vote on this bill.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I too rise in support of this bill, and I thank Representative Murray for putting that together. Colleagues, if you were watching TV last night, you saw the gentleman leaving the Target store after he'd stolen some credit card information and went out and used that information. That's the thing that we're talking about here. The cyber world in which we live, information is going to be available. It's just not a question of if, it's a question of when. So as we look at all this, and I see Representative Buckner back there watching intently, you know how much information we gather on students, and actually when that goes to the Department of Education, very little of that is actually necessary for personal identification. We look at a group of 6th graders statewide. You don't have to identify them by name and number and address. You look at a group of high school students. You don't have to identify them by name and address and phone number. So we're talking about a data security issue here and the ability for us to make sure that the data that does need to be collected by CDE is safeguarded. And that's, again, I can't emphasize enough, folks, this is definitely a step in the right direction and a good move on the part of Representative Murray, but the need that we have is huge. As you all know, when you're sitting there with your phones and you Twitter, once it's gone, and it can be picked up by anyone. So as we look at that data, and I know that Representative Schaefer knows how much data is stockpiled there at CDE, and much of it is great, and it's used to analyze student progress. But the personal information about my children, where they live, who their parents are, and so forth, is really not necessary. So I commend Representative Murray on putting this together, and it's certainly a step in the right direction for the security of our students, and still to make available the data that's needed to study the progress of those students. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wilson. Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Murray, I thank you for bringing this bill forward. I think there's a lot of conversation in the process now about what type of data we need to collect and how we need to collect it, but there's no disagreement that the data that's collected ought to be protected, and that's what your bill does. Thank you.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is a really great bill. Representative Murray, when she brought this idea forward, was told, this is too hard. Don't do this. This is just too hard. We can't get this done. I think it's an example, a great example of her leadership on both sides of the aisle, because she's able to do that, and her intelligence in the subject matter. This is a really good bill. I ask for, not that there's anybody sitting here, we're all alone. Could you get the camera to pan here so that we can see who actually is working in the body? I ask for an aye vote on this bill. This is a very good bill. Representative Lawrence is in her chair working. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1294? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1294. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 1294 is passed. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1309.
House Bill 1309 by Representative Gardner, also Senator Stedman, concerning repurposing the Day Surgery Center at the Denver Reception and Diagnostic Center into an auxiliary medical facility.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1309 and the report of the Committee on Public Health Care and Human Services.
Thank you, Representative Gardner. To the Public Health Committee report. Representative Gardner.
The report. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Health Committee report. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Gardner.
Thank you. I ask for an aye vote.
An expeditious aye vote. Seeing no further discussion, is there all in favor of House Bill 1309? Please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1309 is adopted.
We'll do this kind of halfway. How's that? Is that okay?
Madam Majority Leader. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1349.
House Bill 1349, Representatives Hollinghorst and Del Grosso, also Senator Heath, concerning the creation of an exemption from property taxes for qualifying business entities controlled by nonprofit organizations that are formed for the purpose of qualifying for federal tax credits.
To report on it. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1349, and there is no committee report.
To the bill, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill applies to nonprofit-owned office buildings that have state of Colorado real property tax exemption. And for these buildings, in order to qualify for federal tax credits such as historic, energy, new market, and low-income housing, federal guidelines require that the tax credits be paid to tax-paying entities. So what this bill does is it allows them to do that by cooperating with investors through LLCs or LLPs, limited liability companies, or limited liability partnerships. To get that investment and to maintain their nonprofit status for the purposes of property tax in the state of Colorado.
Mr. Minority Leader, Representative Del Grosso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I couldn't have said it any better. This is basically just a bill that puts these nonprofits on equal footing with the for-profit companies. I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1349? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1349. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. House Bill 1349 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to Senate Bill 163.
Senate Bill 163 by Senator Stedman and King, also Representative Lee, concerning clarifying changes to provisions related to the sentencing of persons convicted of drug crimes.
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 163.
To the bill, Representative Lee.
Senate bill, excuse me.
Senate
Thank
bill.
you, Representative Conti. I move Senate Bill 163. This was a bill that passed unanimously out of the Senate on the consent calendar, makes some, it cleans up some provisions in Senate Bill 13250 from last year, which was a major overhaul of the drug sentencing provisions. The bill basically was the result of collaborations between the district attorney and the defense bar, and they reached consensus on these amendments. And I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Representative Lee. Mr. Minority Leader, Representative Del Grosso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I also urge an aye vote on Senate Bill 163. This is a cleanup from a bill that I was on last year, and there was a few things that were some drafting errors and a couple of things that were missed in last year's bill, and I appreciate Representative Lee and his work on getting this year, and so I urge an aye vote.
Thank you, Representative Del Grosso, Mr. Minority Leader. Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 163? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 163. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Senate Bill 163 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the committee proceed out of order for consideration of House Bill 1322.
Seeing no objection, committee will move out of order as Majority Leader has requested for House Bill 1322. Mr. Kohler, will you read the title to House Bill 1322?
House Bill 1322, Representative McLaughlin, also Senator Roberts, concerning the Colorado Probate Code.
Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Every year, the Colorado Bar Association tries
Representative
to...
McLaughlin, will you move your bill, please?
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, first of all, I would move the bill and the committee report from the Judiciary Committee.
To the Judiciary Committee report. Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you. Basically, every year the Bar Association updates the probate code, and this is the attempt by the bar to update the probate code, which will deal with what your children will receive or not receive in your wills and your trust and the rest of your probate matters. There were 3 committee amendments which were approved on a 11-0 vote, and the bill came out 11 vote out of the Judiciary. They dealt with the elective share, which is the right of a spouse to receive against the terms of a will. They dealt with interest on claims, and they dealt with life insurance proceeds, whether or not they should be part of the estate. So this is a highly technical bill, but the Bar Association has done a wonderful job in processing this bill. So I would ask the approval of the committee report.
Thank you, Representative McLaughlin. Is there any further discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the questions before us is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report to House Bill 1322. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The Judiciary report is adopted. To the bill, Representative McLaughlin.
Members, I would move the adoption of House Bill 1322. It's a good bill, and it will help the citizens of the state of Colorado. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1322? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1322. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1322 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report as requested by the Majority Leader.
The House will come to order. Don't worry, the code rule is still relaxed. I relaxed it a while ago. Mr. Kohler, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, Committee of the Whole begs leave reports under consideration of following attached bills being second reading of and makes the following recommendations thereon. House bills. 1036 amended, 1118 amended, 1144 amended, 1162 amended, 1175 amended, 1202 amended, 1205 amended, 1269 amended, 1279 amended, 1294 amended, 1301 amended, 1317 amended, 1322 amended, 1333, 1344 amended, 1349. Passed on second reading or gross placed on calendar for third and final passage. Senate Bills 160 and 163 passed on second reading or revised placed on calendar for third and final passage. House Bill 1066 referred to the Committee on Appropriations. House Bill 1320 as amended lost on second reading.
Representative Lee. You've heard the motion. There are no amendments at the desk. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Becker, Del Grosso, Giroux, Humphrey, Kraft-Tharp, Landgraf, Lebsack, Sane, and Zabo. You gotta press your button.
Zabo had to leave.
Oh, Zabo excused. Close the machine. With 61 aye votes, 1 no vote, 3 excused, and 0 absent, the report of the committee is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Okay, seeing none, members, for those who won't be here tomorrow, good luck at your assemblies and have good fun at your state assemblies. We will see you tomorrow back here at 9 for those who will be here. We just have a couple things to read across the desk. You're free to go. Good work. Reports to committees of reference.
The Committee on Business, Labor, Economic, and Workforce Development, after consideration on the merits of committee requirements following Senate Bill 117, be referred favorably to the Committee on Finance. Senate Bill 156, be referred to the Committee of the Whole for recommendation. The Committee on Education, after consideration on the merits of committee requirements following House Bill 1319, be amended as follows and as so amended, be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. Senate Bill 165, be amended as follows and as so amended, be referred to the Committee on the Whole with favorable recommendation. The Committee on Judiciary, after consideration on the merits of committee requirements following House Bill 1310, be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. House Bill 1347, be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. The Committee on Transportation and Energy, after consideration on the merits of committee requirements following House Bill 1356, be referred favorably to the Committee on Finance. Senate Bill 125, be amended as follows and as so amended, be referred to the Committee on Finance with favorable recommendation.
Conference committee reports.
First report on First Conference Committee on Senate Bill 131. This report amends the re-revised bill.
Delivery of bills to the governor.
Chief Clerk of the House of Representatives reports following bills have been delivered to the Office of the Governor. House Bills 1057, 1141, 1282.
Remainder of the report will be printed in the Journal. Message from Dr. Evil.
Mr. Speaker, Dr. Evil is supposed
The
to...
remainder of the message from Dr. Evil will be burnt by a laser beam, sent back to that hole where Dr. Evil lives, and then printed in the journal. Introduction of bills.
House Bill 1370 by Representative Melton concerning limitation on when disciplinary action may be commenced against a mental health professional.
House Bill 1370 signed in Committee on Health Insurance Environment.
House Bill 1371 by Representative Young, also Senator Grantham, concerning property taxation of oil and gas leaseholds and lands in connection with specifying that the wellhead is the point of valuation and taxation for such leaseholds and lands.
House Bill 1371 is signed in the Committee on Finance.
House Bill 1372 by Representatives Conti and McCann, also Senator Marble, concerning unauthorized advertising for adoption purposes.
House Bill 1372 is signed to the Committee on Public Health Care and Human Services. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in adjournment until tomorrow at 9
Madam Majority
a.m.
Leader, would you like to lay over the balance of the calendar first?
Thank you all for keeping me in line. I withdraw that motion and I move that we lay over the balance of the calendar.
See, no objection. The balance calendar will be laid over till tomorrow. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you. And now I move that the House stand in adjournment until tomorrow morning, April 11 at 9 o'clock.
See, no objection. The House will stand adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Great work, everyone.